The arrest and 150-year sentencing of the famous U.S. investment advisor Bernie Madoff for 11 federal crimes associated with fraud in the Ponzi scheme raised public and academic interest in this type of financial crime from the perspective of its impact on its financial victims. The scheme by Madoff was estimated to involve more than 65 billion and dozens of thousands of victims. Yet, one fact that two of his sons who worked at Madoff's company were the ones to report their father to the feds has not been charged with any crime particularly caught my attention. I got interested in whether and how it can be possible that the closest members of the family who worked side by side with Bernie Madoff were not aware of the fraud. What was their role in operations and process within the company then? And are they really that innocent to be let go, given that they were successfully spending millions of stolen money on their personal luxurious lifestyles, mansions, and yachts? The ethical side of the question becomes particularly interesting since the oldest son of Madoff, Mark Madoff, committed suicide on the second anniversary of his father's arrest, with his friends and family indicating his moral and mental struggles with the whole situation. This presentation aims to untangle this complex issue and discuss it from multiple perspectives with a focus on the role and outcomes of Madoff's scandal or Mark Madoff's suicide. Who is Bernie Madoff? Bernie Madoff is an American financier famous for executing the largest Ponzi scheme in the history and 65 billion fraud with thousands of victims defrauded out of tens of billions of dollars over the period of more than 17 years. He chaired the NASDAQ stock market and was a reputed hedge fund investment manager. In 1960, he founded his company, Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities, which turned out and was admitted by Madoff himself to be a Ponzi scheme. While Madoff claimed he had started the Ponzi scheme in the 1990s, the investigators believe he commenced the fraudulent activities in 1970s, and this makes it unclear how many victims there exactly were and how much money he defrauded from the investors. The victims included famous and powerful people such as director Steven Spielberg, the Nobel Peace Prize winner Ali Weissel, and actors Kevin Bacon. When the fraud was revealed, he got a 150-year sentence after being accused of money laundering and other felonies, including securities fraud. He died in prison in April 2021 at the age of 82. What is a Ponzi scheme? The Ponzi scheme is basically a financial fraudulent pyramid where the earlier investors are paid and repaid with money invested by the later investors, and not with the money generated as actual returns on their true investment. The only difference between the Ponzi scheme and the pyramid scheme is that the former only requires investing, while the later also suggests that victims may earn more income by recruiting other investors and involving more people in the pyramid. Ponzi scheme works only till the new investment comes, and as long as cash outflows are covered by money inflows. It collapses when the number of new investments cannot cover the repayments to the existing earlier participants. As it is explained by researchers, on the psychological level, the success of Ponzi scheme in general and in the United States in particular are driven by the desire for rapid financial gains by using the opportunity. This may equally explain why a large number of people do not suspect the fraud for a long time until the scheme starts collapsing. Arrest and conviction of Bernie Madoff. According to public information, Madoff's fraud left more than 40,000 victims globally across 125 countries. Bernie Madoff's sons, Mark and Andrew Madoff, as well as his wife, Ruth, were the first ones to whom Madoff confessed to the fraud. On December 10, 2008, when confessing to his sons, Bernie hoped to win some time and distribute millions of dollars in bonuses to his employees, and then shut down the company. At the time, Mark and Andrew were the senior managers at the company's trading operation, working separately from the advisory business involved in the fraud. Instead of helping their father, they decided to alert the FBI right away. And the next day, Madoff's office were raided while he was detained. In court, Madoff was claiming that his family was not involved or aware of the scheme. However, the investigators and the trustee tracking down funds for investors did not believe that. Given that Bernie's wife used to keep the books, his brother acts as chief compliance officer, and his sons were the senior executives of the company. Hence, the family got under an investigation that lasted several years and ruined their lives and reputation. Neither of Madoff's sons ever signed their names to bail their father out of jail after his arrest. Moreover, Madoff's sons refused to speak to their mother, Ruth, after their father's arrest, as they could not understand how and why she continued supporting him and living with him during these 3 months that he was under house arrest in 2008 and 2009. The family has basically fallen apart with the tragic deaths of both Mark and Andrew in 2010 and 2014, respectively. Mark was found dead in 2010, hanging fully clothed from a dog leash on a pipe at his Soho apartment ceiling, on the secondary anniversary of his father's arrest. Mark tried to commit suicide in 2009 by swallowing pills. Therefore, this is not his first suicide attempt. Mark Madoff's work at the company. Mark Madoff joined Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities to work at the firm's market making and proprietary trading branch. After graduating from the University of Michigan, this unit was run by him together with his brother Andrew Madoff and was a success on Wall Street for more than 2 decades. Mark was very proud of his career with the market making business, employing around 120 people and trading millions of shares daily. The firm's proprietary trading business run by the brothers was established in 1997 and generated approximately $270 million during 11 years of its existence, significantly outperforming the market competitors. At the same time, both he and his brother were being paid 6-figure salaries from Bernie Madoff's company and were entitled to use the corporate business cards financed directly from the investors' money. As the scheme later revealed, Mark Madoff and Andrew Madoff purchased their multi-million-dollar houses with money from their investors. Mark Madoff was reported to earn almost $30 million from his father's firm over the 8 years preceding the crash, while also still benefiting from Madoff's fraudulent investment advisory business, using $17 million more from the family's account than he deposited. This all served as grounds for Irene L. Picard, the trustee seeking to recover money from Madoff's victims, to accuse Mark and Andrew of being completely incompetent in their duties at the firm if they were telling the truth on their non-awareness of the fraud. He also claimed that the brothers either failed to detect or failed to stop the fraud, thereby enabling and facilitating the Ponzi scheme. Mark's life after Madoff's arrest. According to available information, Mark Madoff was not a target of criminal investigation as he was not found guilty or aware of his father's scheme. He tried to keep his life going after his father's arrest and find a job on Wall Street. However, his name became toxic for an evident reason, and no one would hire him. While his wife decided to even change her and their children's last name to Morgan for that reason. He launched the real estate newsletter Sonar Report, hiding his real name from the subscribers. Though he was trying to build a new business, he was repeatedly listed in the lawsuits from the victims of his father's scheme, seeking to recover millions of dollars in damages. The relevant news articles and media publications thus were portraying him as being under continuous investigation for his potential role in Bernie Madoff's crime, thus destroying any attempts to rebuild his own reputation. The irony of the situation was that, according to sources close to the family, cited in the article by CNBC, he had always been so proud of his name and being the guy who was Bernie Madoff's son. And then afterward, all anyone ever saw in him was that he was Bernie Madoff's son. From the ethical perspective, the assumption that Mark Madoff and his brother Andrew Madoff could have suspected the fraud and brought their father to responsibility earlier might be reviewed from Unitarian and deontological perspectives. The Unitarian approach implies that the morality of actions should be judged based on the outcomes of such decisions and with regard to the greatest amount of benefit for the greatest number of people's principle. In other words, this consequentialist approach suggests that this decision may harm some individuals while the net benefit should be of maximum positive effect for many people. In this regard, Mark should have questioned his father's super revenues earlier with thousands of clients involved and potentially put at risk instead of caring about his own and his family's wealth and income. Their decision to report their father might also be suspicious and considered to be the last attempt to save their own reputation, lives, and money in the wake of the inevitable financial crisis. At the same time, deontology is based on the ethics of duty and implies that the morality of an action should be determined by the nature of the action itself without consideration of its consequences. It basically requires people to follow their duty and rules. And from this perspective, Mark Madoff and Andrew Madoff were not doing anything illegal or unethical while working at their father's company and running the business branches effectively for their customers, as the revenues and investigation imply, if we assume that they are not involved in such Ponzi scheme. People like Mark Madoff and Andrew are in positions of trust and should have exercised a reasonable level of care in carrying out their fiduciary responsibilities. Their ignorance or hiding of truth violated that trust and abused their power as trustees of the funds. Their actions were motivated by greed and a belief they could get away with the fraud. Both the Madoff family and their clients were blinded by the lucrative revenue that they can make in this Ponzi scheme. Mark Madoff ignored his fiduciary duty of telling the truth and remaining in compliance with the law. His clients focused on Bernie Madoff's fame and qualification without doing any due diligence by themselves. Why is this case important for me? This case was very interesting for me in terms of my future career decision-making and approach to dealing with certain situations in the workplace. In particular, it is the question of reputation and the importance of doing the right thing in a professional career. The negative impact of doing the wrong thing can not only affect oneself, but also tremendously impact one's family members. In Madoff's Ponzi scheme, if we assume that Mark is truly innocent in all steps of the scheme, his father's wrongdoing caused his emotional burden and eventually his suicide. Hence, it is important to always leverage the risks and to critically evaluate the situation rather than focusing only on how lucrative a return such action can bring. Doing the right thing and pointing out the wrong things can be one of the ways for most people to have a good sleep at night. We do not know if Mark and his brother had been involved in the scheme, but it is clear that they did not exercise their fiduciary duty to understand the operation of the company and be responsible to all their investors. At the same time, the investors should have evaluated Bernie Madoff's business and the investment that they were going to make. I would not say that there were any parties that are purely innocent in this world-famous Ponzi scheme. Thank you.